It's when I had to take some time off of work because I was getting a dental surgery. And I was just sitting in my bed and I couldn't do anything. And I was just thinking, and the idea of a card game came to my mind. So from my bed, I started drawing and writing in a notebook. And eventually that turned into index cards and then printing out paper that was the size of cards and cutting them and sticking them together. So that's how it grew. But yeah, I think that could happen to anyone. It just goes to show sometimes you just need to not be brainstorming at your computer. You need to be resting or doing something else for an idea to float into your head.
My people, welcome to the Principled Minds podcast, where we bring to you a person or a message to help you uncover the core principles of making your vision for your career and personal life a reality. Relax, open your mind, and be ready to receive at least one piece of information that may encourage you to take action today. Welcome to the family.
It is so good to have you back on the show. You know, in my quest to be a good leader to the teams that I serve, I've made it a point of duty to learn from people who are currently leaders and those who are being led at how to build and lead an effective team. On this episode, our guest and I will be having a conversation on how to build a strong team culture. She has served as a senior business consultant at a Big Four accounting firm, and now with a vision to create meaningful connections and inspire authenticity in the workplace, our guest founded a company called Let's Circle Back. Let's Circle Back is a storytelling game and prompt deck designed to help consultants bond over work-related stories and opinions. So I'm incredibly excited for this conversation. I hope you are as well. Join me in this conversation with our guest today, Shivani Dimri. Hello, Shivani.
Hi, Charles.
How are you doing? Good to see you again.
I'm good. Good to see you. Long time no see.
Long time no see, even though it was probably a day or so ago. It was really nice to meet you in person for the first time yesterday. I love to start my episodes with a place of gratitude, but I want to tell a little story on how we found or how we met each other before we dive into that. So for anyone listening, I met Shivani on LinkedIn. I was literally on LinkedIn, a nice little evening. And one of my mentors who I worked with in the past happened to have liked a video or a clip. Was it a clip? No, a post on LinkedIn. And that post was on Let's Circle Back, which is a game that we're going to talk in much detail in a few minutes now. But I saw that post and was really inspired by your journey and the concept that we're going to talk about, the concept of this company and of this game that really impacts the corporate world, specifically corporate America, as we think about developing great relationships with, your team, with your colleagues, whether it's at work. And quite frankly, I would dare say it also helps with building even personal relationships, depending on how you decide to play the game. We're going to dive into what the game is about and really the impact of the game in a few minutes. But I saw that concept, was really drawn to the idea, and decided to reach out to Shivani to learn more about what this is really about, because I was truly inspired with the fact that you decided to take a chance on yourself, right? And take action on something that you had as a vision, and now you have made a reality. And considering that this podcast is really focused on helping people uncover the principles of turning vision to reality, I'm hoping that by people learning more about your journey, your experience, and the concept of this company and of this idea, they would also be inspired to take action on whatever it is that they have as a vision in their life as well. So it's been a great pleasure getting to know you, Shivani, and I'm excited for the audience to get to know you as well.
Yeah, thank you. It was really awesome to find you on LinkedIn, and it felt so natural seeing that we had so many mutual connections from our, I used to work at EY and you currently work at EY, including the person that, you saw that they liked their post. How do I say this? I guess you saw them like a post of mine.
Exactly.
That was kind of a long way of saying that, but I
Isn't it
was really excited that I found someone through LinkedIn and was actually able to connect with them.
isn't it amazing the power of just networking,
Mhm.
virtually, not even in person. It's not like we met at a conference or we met somewhere. We literally
Mhm.
met each other online. But it was just a
Yeah.
natural connection, natural conversation, even when we first connected over a call.
Mhm.
And, I'm even excited for, our friendship, as we continue to get to know each other. So pretty
Yeah.
cool stuff. I love to start my episodes with gratitude. So Shivani, tell us, what has made you smile in the last 7 days?
Well, I just came back from a little 4th of July vacation because we're recording this in July. And it was really neat to explore the Eastern Shore of Virginia for the first time. And something else I did was take a ferry to a little island in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay called Tangier Island. And it was really unique to go on such an experience. And this island is so small, people only have golf carts to get around, and the shoreline is decreasing every year. So it was really fascinating to see that in action, seeing the shoreline and the sand where the beach used to be, and then it coming closer and closer inland. So it was super fascinating. That was my favorite part of my trip. So I'm just grateful that we live somewhere so close in the DC metro area that we can explore such gems so easily.
Yeah. How did you even discover that?
Tangier Island, I don't know. My boyfriend discovered this island on probably Google Maps. He's really explorative like that and he scrolls on Google Maps and looks at where the green spaces are on Google Maps to look at and discover new parks. And maybe that's how he found it, or maybe someone told him. I don't remember, but he was really excited to go to this island. So I was like, sure, let's give it a
Let's
try.
do
So we
it.
ended up on this ferry and off to the island we went.
So it is safe to say you're a beach girl,
Yeah.
essentially.
I
Really?
do love the beach.
So what if someone told you, hey, let's go for a hike on this long, huge mountain and let's go to the beach? You would probably choose the beach.
I think I would choose beach, but
Really?
I really like the mountains too. I just I like warm weather though, so I think that's what
Mm,
draws me to the beach.
interesting. Interesting. How
Mhm.
often do you take just time off to unwind and detach from the craziness of work or whatever it is you're working on?
Too often. I think that I've been pretty busy lately, with a full-time job plus working on a business on the side. So this was really refreshing going on this trip.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
Mhm.
Well, it's good to have you back and even much better having you on the podcast here today. All right. So the topic of today is really focused around building a strong culture, whether as a business owner or as a team leader, specifically as a team leader, if you are managing a project or leading a project or are part of a project that is being led by someone, how do you contribute to creating a strong culture within your project, and also building good relationships with the people that you work with? Now, just by speaking with you, I can already tell that you have a phenomenal personality and have been able to build really good relationships with the people that you work with in general. So I'd love to learn from you, from your perspective. Well, from two perspectives. First is, if you were in a position of leadership, and are you? Let me start with that. Are you in a position of leadership in any way? You're managing a project, you're managing a team. What's your current role in the place you work right now?
Yeah, the current place I work, I left EY recently and now I work at a small minority owned federal contracting business. And my role in my project is not as a manager. However, I am project managing certain projects for our clients. So, in some ways, I am a leader and I believe that everyone can be a leader at any level.
100%. So talk to us
Mhm.
about, how you believe a leader can build a strong, positive culture within your team.
Yeah, I think it's everyone's responsibility to try to build relationships at work. And if you are a leader, it's really critical for you to, when you welcome people to your team, to try to get to know them and find at least one anchor of connection between each other. So what I really like when I join a project is to try to have a one-on-one with everyone and try to tease out, did we go to the same school? Do we each have a sibling? Is there something in there? Or did we both previously work at a different employer together? Or do we have the same career aspiration? So that's something I like to do. And then ongoing one-on-ones with people that you feel like you want to continue to have a relationship with that's deeper, especially with your direct supervisor or any people that are under you at work too.
Is there an approach to determining the right person to start building that type of relationship with? I know you mentioned your immediate supervisor or your manager, whoever is above you, and the people, that probably work with you or under you. But curious to know, from your perspective in a work environment, when you think about developing relationships with people around you, is there an approach to determine, hey, who strategically do I build a relationship with or strengthen a relationship with? Or should it happen more organically?
I think it should be a bit organic, but it's best to go out of your way to try to get to know everyone to see who you might click with. Just on the surface, you might not know who you really resonate with unless you try to get to know them at least once.
Now, you talk about, now there are a lot of people that may go into conversations where they feel, great, I just started working at this company. I don't know anyone. And I am not the most outgoing person where, talking to people is not something that just comes naturally, or this individual might not even know what to say when they connect with people. How have you been able to navigate breaking that ice between you and someone that you're meeting for the first time and your team, and building that initial spark where you both can actually have a reasonable conversation?
Yeah, that was really hard when I started my first job out of college because I got my first job in consulting, but before that, none of my internship or pre-graduation experience related to business. It was all government. So I felt like the energy and the vibe in government is a little different than that of consulting, where in consulting, I started on my first project, and this was pre-pandemic. So we were all in this war room, quote unquote, where you're in a conference room and you're trying to do some kind of sprint for a few weeks. It was that kind of project. And I didn't really understand the importance of building relationships with the folks that I worked with. I thought all that mattered was the quality of work. So as an introvert, I was like, fine, I can put my head down and work. And then eventually my work will speak for itself. But on the other hand, I felt like the people that I worked with, I didn't know what to say to them. I didn't know what we related on initially. And yeah, I honestly even felt scared to go to the bathroom or get up. Yeah, I really had a hard time speaking up. And the times when I did, I felt like sometimes it wasn't well received. I don't know. So I had a really hard time with my first project. And I think part of that had to do with not knowing how to break the ice with people. I do think it's the manager or the other team members' responsibility to try to loop in the new person though, but it's also on me as the new person to show up and be authentic and try to build those relationships too.
You mentioned something very important though. You said, sometimes you felt scared. I think it takes a lot for someone to feel scared or very uncomfortable to say something or to connect with someone, or even to attempt to connect to someone. Was there something that you experienced, you observed, or you felt from people's actions, whether it's a manager or the coworkers, that made you feel like that was the type of environment that you were currently in at the time?
Yeah, I think that team, like I said, it was like in the war room, quote unquote, and it was a short-term project, just a few weeks. So there was really this intense energy of like, we have to get this done. And, this sense of everyone is worried. So you feed into that vortex a little, or that's kind of how it felt like to me. So it felt like this great sense of urgency that may or may not really need to be, with consulting, we're not doing emergency medical services, So yes, there are urgent things, but I do think it's a manager's responsibility to somewhat shield the people below them from that panic
I see.
and
I
still
see.
create moments where we can laugh together or enjoy a lunch together and people can relax their shoulders, you know?
That's a really good point. So it's like you came into an environment where probably there's a crazy deadline.
Mhm.
Everyone is just, tense, and the manager's probably not helping matters because they're probably like, let's get this
Yeah.
done,
And
you
the
know.
partner was like, I'm not happy. Like I remember like hearing her say something like that, you know?
Oh man, that's
Yeah.
that's a definitely very uncomfortable environment to get in as the
Yeah.
first time
Mhm.
experience. So you're suggesting that in that instance, a manager should create moment intentionally, knowing how intense the environment is and intense things are. Create an environment where people feel like they can relax and they can just take a step back a little bit and just connect with each other, even in the midst of that,
Mhm.
of tight deadlines, right? So if that was something that was created by a manager, would that in any way really have made you feel comfortable enough to connect with people?
Yeah, I definitely think that would have helped. And as I progressed in my career, going from being a staff, which was an entry level role, to senior, which is a little more advanced, I felt a little more empowered over time to create those moments for my team, to be able to tell my team, you can come in when you want. I'm not going to force people to come in at a certain time as long as we're here for our meetings by this time, for example, or being able to have that cheery, you know what? I think I need a snack. Does anyone want to leave the conference room and come down to the kitchen or go to CVS and look for pretzels or something like that? So I was really happy that later in my career, I was able to provide an environment to other team members, regardless of their rank, where they felt like they could also let their guard down a little.
Interesting. So as you transition so you joined EY as a staff, correct?
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
then you said you got promoted to senior while at
right.
EY. Okay. As you progressed in your career, what were some of the things that you noticed from the managers that you had worked with that you believed are great traits that a leader should have in order to create a culture, a positive culture where co-workers connect well with each other within their teams?
Yeah, I think that managers that always make time for you really help the team culture. If there's someone who's willing always to make time for you, if you need a one-on-one, whether it's about, hey, I'm not sure if that meeting went well with the client, was that well received? Sometimes I've had those talks with my managers after a meeting as well and said, I just want someone to talk to right now. So I think that's a really great trait when that person is acting like they have the time for you. It's not just about the meetings, boom, 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 but they also are flexible enough and they're a people person enough that they're willing to have extra conversations and they consider that as part of work. It's not just those like physical deliverables, but it's also about the conversations that you have and making your team feel valued as well. Like those are also deliverables, they're just not tangible. That
Mm,
experience that you give to your team members.
that's a good point. So one I hear is making time for
Mhm.
your team. I think you're very big on one-on-ones from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I'm an introvert, but I like being in groups too. I think there's definitely room for fun in a conference room. Like my manager a few months ago, she put these icebreaker questions. She cut them up into pieces of paper and put them in Easter eggs with candy and then put the Easter eggs in the conference room. So then when throughout the day we wanted some treats, we would open up the Easter eggs and read out the questions and
That
have
is so
candy
cool.
too. So it was so fun. Like, and the questions are so silly too. It was so fun. One of them was like, "What's your third favorite animal?" And that's the
Oh,
one I
wow.
remember. That just really lightens the mood in those
Yeah,
moments.
that's amazing. So
Mhm.
so that's one. One is making time for
Mhm.
your team, creating more personal moments where you're able to
Mhm.
connect one-on-one with your teammates. What other traits do you see that you think is a very important trait that you've seen leaders have to build a good culture within your team?
coming up with an inclusive environment, inclusive activities for the team. That could range from inclusion in the sense of everyone gets to say their opinion about a work product, but also inclusion in the sense of what kind of team building activities we do and building our team culture collectively, not a manager saying like, this is our team culture. We are like happy hour people. Like we go out every few days and we get a drink. Like that's not necessarily inclusive because not every team member might want to do that. So I'd rather there be a team culture where everyone gets to feed into that team culture and have a say in what we do together to build that culture. And the reason I came up with that example was because with my team building card game for consultants, let's circle back a few months ago, I sent out this survey to my network to ask for their opinions about team building. And when I was reading through the qualitative responses, I asked a question of, tell me about your good and bad team building activities or team building experiences. And a couple of people mentioned that they don't like happy hours, but other people said they do like them. So I think that goes to show that it depends, and you want to make sure that everyone feels like they're enjoying themselves. Some people love the idea of loosening up with a drink and doing something off the clock. And then other people say maybe they don't want to partake in going to a bar, or maybe they have other personal commitments outside of work. So it really strains them too and puts people in a hard place about going to something after work. So it really depends. And the survey results also said that people like when everyone gets a say and everyone buys in and isn't forced to do this kind of activity, whatever your team building activity may be.
Interesting. What was the percentage that said they didn't like happy hours compared to those that
was
did?
A qualitative. So I was reading a bunch of stories, so I don't remember the percentage, but I do remember I put out a question that was quantitative of share what are your preferred team building activities, and it was a check all that apply. So 90% said that they like team meals / happy hours. And then the next most popular things were challenges in games. So people liked, for example, going to an escape room or doing trivia together, something like that. And then the next most popular thing was volunteering. So those were some really good insights.
That's definitely really insightful. So what I'm hearing is making time for one-on-one time with your teammates, creating an inclusive environment through making sure that the voices of people are heard within your team, whether it's on a project or even down to, fun moments, right? With your teams, creating any games or whatever it is that the team would like to kind of see to create an environment that is more enjoyable for them is something that should be a collaborative effort, not just the manager saying, do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, it does negate the fact that, if you want to create a good environment, you have to make sure that the people that you're working with in some way feel like they are part of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're part of a community. And being an inclusive leader where you can solicit the thoughts of your teammates, regardless of what the event is something to keep in mind. Now, there are going to be some people that will say, well, I cannot make time for everyone all the time, or I cannot include everyone in every decision that I make. What would be your message to them?
I've seen partners make time. So I don't know. I kind of question that a little. I've seen partners make time for people, and then I've seen partners not make time. So I think that everyone has time in some way. And even if it's something that has to be pushed out to a few months in advance, if that's necessary, I think you still have time maybe to respond to a ping or schedule something that's a little more elaborate, like a coffee. I really believe that you need to make time for your people, because your people are what feeds into your work products, and that's what you're giving to your clients.
That's such a good point. Now, I know for a fact that just based on conversations with you, one-on-one conversations are definitely something that you value. Now, let's talk about the quality of conversations that you have with your colleagues that would foster trust, right, amongst the people that you're working with. And I think that's where your team building card game plays a huge, huge role, is helping people determine how to break that first ice in order to have valuable conversations with the people that they work with, whether it's your supervisors or their colleagues. So from your perspective, how important is the questions that we ask in the conversations that we have with people in building trust amongst the people you work with?
Yeah, I think that my belief is we need to start with questions that are not too personal. I think that the premise of my deck, or the questions that are in Let's Circle Back, the different prompts in this deck, are about work-related stories and opinions, because that is the beginning of our common ground. We're all here because we work in this field together. We work at this company together. So that's a great place to start. And then from there, building up into more personal or more extracurricular kinds of interests that people might have. Because I know some people don't want to talk about their family life or their friendships or their dating life at work. So I believe a great place to start is those work-related experiences. Like, we've all had email mishaps, or we've all had interesting interview experiences, or heard anecdotal things about other people's interviews or internships. So I would start with those kind of stories.
Can you give me an example of how that will play out? So let's say I am one of your coworkers. You met me for the first time. You're trying to break the ice to really start a conversation. How would you go about starting off with that theme of questions that you just suggested?
Yeah, I think that some of the questions in my deck might be useful. So some of those kind of questions include,
Let's pull out the
okay,
deck.
all right, yeah. So here are some of the cards. So to give a little background about how the game works, it's a deck of conversation cards where there are a couple people who are playing, and each round there's a new judge. It rotates between the people. And in that round, the judge picks up a conversation card and they read out the prompt. And then everyone else has to give a story or an answer to that prompt. And the judge decides who had the most interesting or best story up to their judgment. And that person gets a rank card. So they start at intern and want to earn cards to get up to the partner card. And that's how you win, by getting up this trajectory, this theoretical career ladder. But there are also early promotion cards and performance improvement plan cards that either slow you down or speed you up on your path to partner. So that's how the game works. And you can play it as the game, or you can just use some of the prompts in a standalone fashion like we're doing right now.
I love that. So I want to talk a little bit more about Circle Back before we play the game. But I would love to get your thoughts on when you mentioned the theme in terms of not getting too personal with questions when you start off with conversations, or you start off a conversation with someone you're meeting for the first time at work. From your perspective, just give me an example of what that question would look like, and let's just play it out. And this is more for a practical approach for someone who really doesn't know where to start. And they're listening to this and would hope to get one or two examples that they can implement almost immediately. What will be some of those examples?
Yeah, a question that I might ask when starting a new project is, can you give me the lay of the land with the different clients that we're working with? What's a way that you've broken the ice with your clients? Do they have any interesting hobbies or any aspirations that they've shared with you?
That's a good one. And that's you asking your colleague just to gain some thoughts on how the project works, and the people that, the clients that you serve in the project. Okay. So how would a gradual transition to a more personal question look like? Like, what would that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I might hear the client, when I ask that question, do they have any aspirations or do they have any personal interests? I might hear, oh, the client has this really interesting background and they have this other side hobby. Like, they entered a poetry contest. And this is something that I've heard about with one of my clients. They entered this poetry contest and won and did an amazing poem. So I might want to talk to the team members more about that, of how do you feel about that? Did you read their poem? What's their poem about? Are you interested in poetry? Do you like reading? And maybe share something that I'm reading.
I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
And that gives a really good picture of what that would look like, right? Because a lot of people may have that challenge is, how do I even start this conversation? Where do I even begin? What is too personal?
Mhm.
What is not? And I think this is a good way to, start off light and then gradually start building that personal connection through figuring out, what personal relationship or ties the person has to the responses that they're providing. So really great context there. All right. So now we've talked about individuals that are joining a team and are looking to build a relationship with their teammates and their supervisors and how to break the ice. But let's talk about from the perspective of the managers, right, that are leading the project. You have mentioned a few good points, which is, as a manager, some of the things that you want to do to build a relationship with your team is make time for your team, be inclusive. I think another key item that I think is really that cuts across both for the people that are joining a team and the person leading a team is the fact that you want to, show effort, right? Because that's one theme I'm hearing is whether you're leading or you're the one being led, you need to put in the effort to get to know the people that you work with. And as long as you're putting that effort and people are seeing that you're putting that effort in, it just hopefully creates that level of trust that, okay, I see this person is putting in some work to get to know me and I can build that trust from there. What other item, before we transition to getting to know more about Let's Circle Back, do you think that anyone listening should really keep in mind as they are seeking to build a good relationship with your team members?
Vulnerability eventually is really important. You don't have to cross any personal boundaries with your coworkers and give them things that are too deep and dark for work. But something that I think about when I'm in more of a supervisory role with maybe a client that's less experienced is sharing my vulnerability too. So no matter where I am, I can say something like, yeah, this is my first time working on a project of this nature, but I'm really excited for us to both learn these skills and both progress in our careers on this. And trust me, when I was on my first project for an OCFO client, I did not have a math or accounting background. So this was really hard for me, but I grew so much from it. You can also say that you've had a journey too. And I'm not coming at this of I know more than you and I'm up here, but we're constantly learning together.
Why is that important?
To make people not feel intimidated. I think that if you are a little vulnerable about you're still learning and growing as a person too, that people are willing to come to you when they're struggling as well. And yeah, just create more of a human element to our work of, you know what, this is not the end of the world if I don't get this correct. If the numbers don't add up or the deck is not approved and the deliverable is not finalized yet, it's okay because the other people on the team are only human as well.
Good point. Really good point there. So let's talk about Let's Circle Back. Now, I can tell that you love good conversations and you value valuable conversations. So let's talk about where this idea came from. So talk to us about Let's Circle Back, the company Let's Circle Back, and then how the idea or the vision for your company came to play.
Yeah, I've always been a really creative person and I love coming up with theme parties. Like I've done murder mysteries, things like that. So I've always been creative. But then the idea for Let's Circle Back came 2 years ago at this point. It's when I had to take some time off of work because I was getting a dental surgery. And I was just sitting in my bed and I couldn't do anything. And I was just thinking, and the idea of a card game came to my mind. So from my bed, I started drawing and writing in a notebook. And eventually that turned into index cards and then printing out paper that was the size of cards and cutting them and sticking them together. So that's how it grew. But yeah, I think that could happen to anyone. It just goes to show sometimes you just need to not be brainstorming at your computer. You need to be resting or doing something else for an idea to float into your head. But then this idea was really great to me because, yeah, it's fun to come up with a game, but also as an introvert, I love the idea of giving people a way to break the ice at work, especially in consulting where we have to build our relationships kind of over and over again as we switch projects. And we want to maintain those relationships too, because you never know where other people are going to be or where you're going to be later in your career when you're going to need a new project and you got to refer back to the people that you worked with before.
That's a good point. So just to clarify, the idea came when you went for your dental break, not at work. So, and it didn't come any time before then at all.
Right. I had not thought about that.
Interesting.
It floated into my head because I was disconnected from work. And I thought it was a little ironic because I'm basically thinking about work when I'm not at work.
That is interesting. Okay, so what I'm also wondering is why that idea specifically? Like, why the need to help people break the ice when it comes to work? Is this one of the core challenges you faced when you started working? I know you said it was a little tough in your first project, but was it a consistent thing that was so big to you that you as a first idea, that was the first thing that had to come to mind for you?
Yeah, that first project was rough, and then I learned over time that work got happier. I was happier at work once I built those relationships and felt like I was building friendships with people. So I want to give that opportunity to other people. I don't want anyone to be unhappy at work where they feel alone.
Interesting. Okay, so that idea comes, and then what happens? You decide to jot that down and make it a reality.
Yeah, but it was a slow process. I drew in the notebook, and then a few months later, I wanted to come back to it. I was like, oh, there might be something there. So let me put it on index cards. And then I had a friend over and I said, like, can you play this with me? And I think I see where you're going with this. I think you have a proof of concept. But then I left it alone for a few more months and then picked it up again. And so in the beginning, it was a slow start until I started building momentum of, okay, I actually want to continue to think about this. I'm getting more excited as I'm building these extra iterations. And then when I finally got to more concrete prototypes, I started accelerating when I was getting to prototypes that came in boxes and, the shiny printed cards, not just index cards or printer paper. I then accelerated from there. But I think I told you previously in one of my game testing sessions, there was a player who had some pretty negative feedback about the game. And that was a point where I really had to think, like, do I want to continue with this or not? Is there something here? Or are my friends just being nice to me? And that was a hard day. But after that, one of my friends texted me and he said, I really hope you continue because I see you're really excited about this and passionate about this. And I think that there's something there. So that little push, not that like blind trust and blind encouragement, but some genuine positive encouragement helped me get over that hump and continue my momentum on the development of the game.
Prior to hearing the negative feedback from, I don't want to say negative, but the feedback that didn't sit too well with you, what type of feedbacks are you getting prior to that feedback? Was it all positive? Or you had gotten none prior to that?
Or neutral. It was just like, oh, that's cool. Like it was so nascent that people were like, oh, that's cool. That's nice that you're making a little thing, And I'd bring it to work sometimes and put it on the table. And I remember these are times when it was just, it was a couple staff and seniors in a conference room. So I scattered out the cards and I was like, look at this. Like, what do you all think? And when you have time, look at my cards. And I remember a senior manager walked in and I was like, should I cover up the cards? Does she think like I'm just like trying to play like Uno or something instead of working? But then she looked at it and she's like, oh, that's so cool. Like maybe we could play that at a all hands. So I also felt encouraged from that of, well, yeah, the idea is fun, but also someone thinks it's actually a practical tool that we can use at work. So that gave me some encouragement too, to keep going.
let me guess, you are enjoying the conversation. Well, if that's the case, share the episode with a family or friend. You never know who could be impacted by this conversation. While you're at it, go ahead and subscribe so that you'll be the first to know whenever we release an episode. And take a screenshot of the episode and tag me on Instagram at Principled Mind so that way I will get to know you and also get to know what you think about the episode. All right, let's get back to the show.
Was that before you heard that comment from your friend? Now, with all the feedback we have received leading up to that, what made that one feedback really hit you hard?
She said something along the lines of, I didn't learn anything from this. And yeah, I didn't like that feedback because I want to feel like it's purposeful. Like I'm, helping someone learn something new about either consulting or about the people that they're playing with. But honestly, the game has completely changed from that point over time. The initial idea 2 years ago looks completely different from what I ended up with over the slow iteration process. And that time was a very pivotal overhaul of the game. After I got that feedback, I did make some significant changes. So even if you get negative or constructive feedback, that doesn't mean just give up necessarily. There could still be fire to keep going with.
That's a really good point. There are a lot of people that are looking to start something, that have a vision or an idea of something that they want to do. And because of one comment, one feedback from someone, this person was a friend, someone that I believe you cared about enough to internalize their feedback. And in some cases, people get that and literally halt their entire plan, their entire dreams because of one feedback or one negative. I'm just going to use the term negative feedback, a feedback that just doesn't in any way, relate to what they were expecting to hear. What made you keep on going? Was it that message that you received from that other friend, or was it something else?
Yeah, it was. I thought, well, I can't just give up on this. I had that mindset after that conversation of, okay, I can take this feedback. It's fine. Even though after everyone left, I got really sad, but then that feedback from my friend, that positive feedback of, I know what she said was harsh, but I think you should keep going. That pushed me a little in that moment. But then after that, I got some clarity after a few days and was like, okay, that feedback hurt. But after thinking about it for a few days, like, I'm going to keep going because not all hope is lost.
How did you get to that conclusion? How did you gain that clarity?
I don't know. I think it's something inherent in you, like this drive. I compare my experience building this card game to my boyfriend. He's doing a PhD, and a PhD is pretty much self-directed. It's a topic that you've chosen yourself and you're committing multiple years of time to it. And I remember once I was working on a project for EY. I was probably complaining because I was working at night and I was sad that I was like, I don't want to work on this, but I feel like I have to, like some proposal. And he said to me, it's okay, we're both working on our dreams. And I got kind of mad in that moment. I was like, this isn't my dream. Like, it's not the same as a PhD. Like, I didn't pick this topic. Like, I'm being required to write about like this topic, and I don't have enough information to go off to fill out this like qual or whatever it is, But then when I started working on Let's Circle Back, it felt like a PhD. It felt like I had this inherent interest in it. Of course, I'm not going to give it up. There's no thought in my head about leaving it. And that's that same thought you have with, I assume, a PhD, this intellectual, this choice you've made, this journey you've chosen to go on. So there's something in there for everyone, I hope. Like, maybe it's not actually pursuing a PhD. Maybe it's some other business idea. But for some people, I think they just have an affinity to something. And it's like they're not their PhD, but their chosen journey. And so, of course, you're not going to give up on it. This was a self-directed activity. I don't know if that's helpful. I don't know if everyone can relate to that, but I feel like you might with Principled Minds.
100%. That's how it
Mhm.
started. It's
Mhm.
There are times when work gets incredibly busy that
Mhm.
I literally don't have it in me to record anything or to reach out to
Mhm.
guests or to edit any episode or to promote the episode after it's being edited and published.
Mhm.
But I remember it goes back to the why. I remember why I started this in the first place. And sometimes you don't get the feedback that you want to get. You don't get the number of views or listens that you want for a particular episode. And it makes you question whether you should continue. But I think when I remember why I'm doing this, and the promise I made to myself was if at least one person can listen to the conversation I'm having with you or with
Mhm.
anyone
And learn
and take
something.
one thing, it doesn't have to be five
Mhm.
things, just one thing. And even in the introduction, that's what I state as well.
Mhm.
Just take one thing that you can leave with. And if someone can say, I achieved this, I learned this one thing, the mission of the podcast is accomplished. And I think remembering that and remembering the fact that me starting this podcast was a dream, a vision for 4 years. And then I had an accident that made me literally rethink everything and,
Mhm.
and question why I delayed for so long. I wondered how many people had a dream or a vision that you just hadn't taken any action on. So having
Mhm.
conversations with people like you who said, yes, I had a vision. I decided to act on it. It took me a while to finally take action, but I took baby
Mhm.
steps. There were times when I got feedback like this is not going to work. This doesn't make any sense. Like I'm not, I don't find this valuable, but you still make that decision to continue. And it's all because your why was strong enough for you, right? And this is not something you're doing for just yourself. When you remember the people that could be potentially impacted by the work that you're doing, it makes a huge difference on whether you continue
Mhm.
that work or not.
Yeah, and every day I remind myself this is the point where some people give up, but I'm going to keep going. Like some people can, you know, are this far along in their journey and then they're going to continue and progress and then they're going to be on How I Built This by Guy Raz or something like that, talking about how they created Burt's
Yes.
Bees or Banks or some really big company, but some people are going to stop because they're going to give up, but
Yeah.
you're not going to get to that big point unless you keep on going every day. And that's how I felt of, wow, like I'm at the point where I'm testing out the game and having people over for game testing sessions. That's great. Not everyone gets the idea out of their head,
Mm.
let alone they're testing it. Or then later thinking, wow, I actually published this. It's on a website. Like not everyone gets that far. But
Exactly.
and yeah, it's not like it's a Nike or like a huge company, but I have to keep reminding myself this is where some people drop off and I have to keep going because it's kind of a pyramid of like people, everyone at the bottom has an idea, but then the next level of the pyramid is when some people start making prototypes. And then after that, it's like final product. And then it gets like fewer and fewer people make it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad that you're one of those people that made the decision to continue because you
Mm-hmm.
never know what this is going to turn into if you don't continue to do what you need to do to find out. So congratulations to you. So let's talk a little bit about the fact that now you've gotten this company off the ground, you went through the prototyping, finally tested it out. At what point did you say, I think this is reasonable enough for me to go ahead and publish? What was that process like for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did several game testing sessions. I did a bunch in January and a bunch in March, and I continued to tweak it slightly over time based off of the feedback. Like I curated the questions in the deck a little more based off of the feedback of the people who played it, and also created an instructions manual and asked people to read the instructions and said, based off of that, do you understand how the game works? And when I felt like that was clear and people felt like they liked the questions generally, I felt like it was okay. But I definitely recommend doing game testing sessions to get feedback. Don't just keep it in your head and then when it's done, throw it out into the world because you're still going to get feedback when you throw it out into the world.
Exactly.
So might as well get some friendlier feedback in the context of your coworkers and your friends when you still have the chance to change it and modify it before you're going to get feedback when it goes out into the world.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. And it also creates a sense of community too, where people feel like they're part of your journey. So you mentioned your friends and family, your coworkers. Did you try anything online to, get some ideas before you kind of refined and finally published?
Well, yeah, I posted about my game on LinkedIn before it was actually published as well, and tried to solicit feedback through, well, of course, inviting people on that are my LinkedIn contacts to play the game too. But a lot of those people are coworkers of mine, so I don't know if they're like complete strangers, to be honest. But at least if they're coworkers, they're not like my best friend. I feel like they'll be a little more objective in giving me some feedback. And yeah, I also put out that survey to my LinkedIn network to get some anonymous feedback about how people feel about team building in order to, if someone has these complaints or grievances about team building, I'm able to kind of try to address them in my marketing or in the game itself to proactively work on something before I get that feedback when the game is actually published and someone's like an unhappy customer.
That makes sense. That makes total sense. How long would you suggest that anyone should go through that phase
of game testing?
Yeah.
I did game testing for maybe half a year, like formal game testing, where I had people over, I had a sign up form, I filmed the game testing session. So that process was a couple months. And before that, it was a little more casual, where I just bring it to a gathering of friends and they would just be like, oh yeah, great job. But then I was like, okay, I need to like document this stuff formally, like come with a notebook and write down what people are saying and film it and record it. So that process of formally game testing was probably a few months or maybe half a year. And I think that's fair.
Okay.
But then at some point you need to cut off. Like you
Right.
can't just keep doing this forever.
Forever. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, that makes a lot of sense. So this is obviously going to differ depending on the business and depend on the product. It could be more, it could be less time for testing, but definitely a good balance is about 6 months. Just to get some real feedback. Okay. Sounds good. All right. So now it's published. You mentioned something very critical, what you had envisioned for this project or for this company or product rather, one of the products, because I know you have a vision for even multiple products down the line. But what you had envisioned for this product starting off isn't what it is now. What had changed? What was the vision originally and what is the vision now?
The original idea for the game was to create a kind of simulation of a consulting project. And now the game is more about team building, which I think is more aligned with me because I have this passion for connecting people and being able to build rapport with people, especially as an introvert. I feel so passionate about giving people the chance to connect because I know it's so scary when you're an introvert and you're in a field that's very reliant on your personality and how you're perceived. So I still care about teaching people how to simulate and learn how to do a consulting engagement, and maybe that's something I'll come back to. But when I started to switch up the game, I got a lot more excited.
Gotcha. So it was more important for you to figure out how you could help introverts break the ice and build real relationships at work and build teams more effectively than simulating a consulting practice.
Yeah, that's where the vision started to go. And where I see the vision continuing to grow is just enabling connection for people. And so that's what I want to continue to do with future games.
I love it.
And yeah, this one is about team building, but there could be other games in the future that are maybe not specifically team building for consultants, but team building for other fields, or something that's more off the clock, so something that's a little more informal as well, something that I could see happening in the future. So those are some of my ideas.
I love it. Now, I would love to play this game, but before that, we'd like to find out from you if this is monetized. Are you actually making money from this now? What's the plan for that in terms of the future of the business, if you're comfortable speaking about that?
Yeah, the game has been published and it is for sale, and I've been starting to make sales. So I'm really appreciative of every single person who's been invested enough that they're willing to purchase the game. Right now, the game is sold on a made to order basis. So when you order a copy, it's like printed then and there. So it's a little slow of a process to get the game to people, unlike if it's on Amazon and it ships in a day. So my long-term vision is to have enough financial capital to be able to create a bulk production of the game and store it and then be able to send it out on a quicker basis to people to really build more momentum. So right now it's in a really nascent stage, but I want it to get to get to people faster.
Got it. Got it.
Mhm.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. How
Mhm.
much is this going for right now?
It's $32.99 right now, but given that it's made to order, most of that is just the production of the game.
I see. How did you come
Yeah.
up with the pricing for the product?
Yeah, I use a game publishing company called The Game Crafter. It's based in Wisconsin, and it's a cool platform that allows you to either make games for yourself or you can make a public facing page for a game. And you create your components according to the dimensions that they require for certain size boxes or cards, and then anyone can order it based off of that. And they tell you how much the cost of production is for a given product, depending on which components, like which box or other items are in your game. And then they give a suggested price of increasing it by a certain amount for the MSRP. And so I wanted to keep it relatively low, knowing that card games don't go for that much money. So I kept it as low as I could to make it accessible to people. But again, like once I have a bulk production run, the cost of production lowers per game. So I'm really excited for the opportunity in the future to get to that point where I can do that.
Do you think you're going to reduce the price? Or you're going to keep the price as it to increase your profit margin?
I want to reduce the price if possible because
Okay.
I want more people to feel comfortable and be able to access it.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that. I'm excited for people learning more about Let's Circle Back and really purchasing the game, and links to the company website as well as where you can purchase this product would also be found in the description box. And hopefully you check it out. I think it's going to be a very valuable product. But to give you more insights for those listening on what this product is really about and how you can use it, Shivani and we're going to just do a quick example, a quick, test here. Even though this is supposed to be an in-person game, we'll see
Yeah.
what we can do virtually. But if you could show us the box, show us what this looks like a little bit, and then we can just talk through what the game is about and how one can play it.
Sure. So this is the box for those that are on video. It says "Let's Circle Back" on the front, and then we've got some information on the sides about what the components of the game are and where are some good use cases for playing the game, such as team retreats, happy hours, team lunches, that sort of thing. And on the back, I kind of get into character and say, "Let's Circle Back. Do you have the bandwidth to synergize with your team? Introducing Let's Circle Back, a card game where you leverage your storytelling prowess to ascend the career ladder. Get ready to touch base, think outside the box, take this conversation offline and more, because there are tons of stories in the pipeline." So the box is kind of in character.
That is so consultant, man.
Yeah. I think it's so funny when
That is hilarious. It's so relatable.
speak. Yeah.
It is so relatable. It is so
Yep.
relatable.
And then we have the cards. So all the cards that are black and white are the conversation cards. And the other cards, the other components, there's an instruction guide. Additionally, like I said earlier, there are early promotion and PIP cards, which either speed you up or slow you down on your career trajectory in the game. And then we also have the rank cards. So as you do well in your storytelling, I'll try to move my hand like that. You're trying to move up in rank, and that's going up in these cards. So For example, the blue one is the director card, and you start at intern and move your way up to the purple card, which is partner. So that's how the game works. And a few of the prompts, I can read out a few, and then maybe Charles, you want to decide if you want to answer any of these?
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it.
So if you started a consulting firm, what would you name it and why? Then we have, how did you end up in consulting? And what's something you bonded with your client over? Do any of those questions speak to you?
So my client and I bonded over a scary movie. So one of my clients, the client before the client I'm working on now, we're having a conversation talking about a weekend, and she told me that she watched a scary movie, and I was like, interesting. So she started talking about the movie, and I realized I'd watched the movie before, and we started talking about it, and literally it was a one-on-one conversation. I had a question for her, and as we're talking, she asked me, how was your weekend? And I told her mine, and she told me hers. And literally we spent 30 minutes literally talking about movies, just talking about all kinds of movies we've watched.
That's awesome.
And it was amazing because then she had like 2 other movies she was looking to watch, recommended a movie that I should watch. So by the following week when we connected on one of our one-on-ones, it was the first thing that we used and started our conversation. And it became a great way that we just both bonded, and it was really nice. But yeah, it was really, I wasn't really expecting it. It was interesting to see that and to know that you can really bond with anyone on anything, just depend on where you find common ground, which is
yeah. And you can give that tip to the other people on your team. Like something I created when I was still at EY for one of my projects was this relationship tracker where I had us all write down on our team who are the different stakeholders that we work with, and of course, like where they are in the organization, what their role is, but also just some like fun facts that any of us have gathered from random conversations with these folks of, oh, so and so went on a vacation to this place, so that might be something to bring up. Or so and so is looking to buy an electric vehicle, so maybe we can ask him later what happened with that. Did he end up buying this car? Yes. So you can also keep track of it too, if you need to try to help your other team members get their foot in the door with these clients too.
I love that idea. So the question you just asked me, what does it fall under? Intern or what?
So all of these cards are fair game for any of these ranks, I guess. The way it works is we have this stack of cards, and then the judge for the round decides, okay, for this, I think that Charles gave the best answer. I really liked his story. I think he had a good idea. So I'm going to give him the intern card. But if you were already far along in the game and you already have been winning cards, then if we were in this point in the game, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to give you your next rank. So you're going to get the director now because you've already progressed this far.
Interesting. Is there a parameter around how far one can get? Maybe if you answer 5 questions, you get the director card. Like, is there,
Yeah, you rotate amongst the players who's the judge. But then when you're not the judge, it's fair game. Anyone could potentially win that card depending on who gave the story that the judge likes best. And you need to like think about it of knowing who the judge is. What story do you think that they would like?
Interesting.
If you know them.
Does anyone get to be a judge? Do you rotate judges, or is it more?
Yeah, you rotate the judges. The way I wrote the instructions was whoever has the longest commute to work is the judge first, and then you rotate from there.
Interesting.
And then if you don't have an answer or can't think of anything in the spot, you can just say, let's circle back to forfeit your turn.
Good to know. Thanks so much for sharing that. I know some people are going to find that really relatable. And for anyone listening, if you are looking to break the ice, or build a relationship with your teammates, establish or start fostering the positive culture where people are able to open up and really, ask questions that are beyond surface level questions. This is a really good way to break that ice and begin that process. So I really encourage you to purchase Let's Circle Back as soon as you can, so that you can start having great conversations with your teammates. All right. So Shivani, I've always wondered, just by, having conversations with you, meeting you and getting to know you more, what contributes to the mindset that you have today? You have mentioned that you're from an immigrant family, and a lot of immigrants, me being one of them also, there's a different type of mindset that we have in some ways when we are working in terms of a work ethic or how we approach things. I'm curious, when you reflect on the woman that you are today, what are some of the experiences in life that you've experienced so far that has contributed to the mindset that you have?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've always been someone who wants to go on journeys and understands that things take the long game sometimes. Like when I was in college, I opted in and applied to be in the thesis program for my major, which was history. And I remember people telling me, like, why would you do all that extra work where you have to write like a 50 to 100 page paper? Why would you do that? But I don't know. I really just wanted to go have that experience. And I always pick something challenging for myself. So it's like, I, I picked Italian as my language to study in college. So I thought, okay, let me do something about Italian history so I can practice my language skills. And I went on this whole journey because I wanted to explore, have new life experiences, get some sense of intellectual satisfaction. So I think one of those life experiences was that desire of like, I want to go out of my way to do this thesis program. And that's kind of the same as this card game. Like I want to go out of my way to try something and do something on the side that's above and beyond what I'm expected to do, which in college was just to graduate, or in the real world is just to get a job that pays the bills and call it a day.
Get a job that pays the bills. I'm curious, growing up, are these the same, ideologies that you had? Is there something that you saw in your parents that maybe contributed to the mindset that you have today?
I think my parents picked a tricky job too. My mom was going to be a doctor. She did her MD in India, but then wasn't able to do a residency in the US. She got into one, but I was already born and my dad had a job somewhere else, so she couldn't take the residency. But she was determined to find a new path, and she ended up being a scientist instead, and still using that some of that transferable knowledge from her MD, which is just so admirable to me. So she was just so committed to like, I'm going to make something of myself. And she says very adamantly, like, my parents did not raise me to just do nothing. Like, I am going to make something of myself. And I'm so proud of her for that.
Wow. So you actually heard her say those words growing up.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised at all that you really have a very similar mindset, thinking about the decisions that you've made up to now, even to launch Let's Circle Back. It's a major one, and something that is extremely admirable too. To wrap up this episode, what are two pieces of advice rather you would give your younger self, and what encouragement would you give Shivani today?
I would tell her that it's going to be a long ride, but don't give up, because I'm 2 years into the first idea of this card game. So keep going. It is worth the extra time that you're spending on it, even if it's slow. Like, just do one thing every day for this game, whether it's responding to an email or spending your whole day making something, So one of my pieces of advice is just keep on going. And then the other thing is reach out to people. Like, don't be afraid to spread awareness about what you're doing and tell people that you're doing it, because you never know who's going to jump on that and say, wow, that's really awesome. Like, I want to help you with that, or do something with you, collaborate with you, or tell people about it, or buy a game. Not that I expect anyone in particular to buy from me, but you just never know who will also be interested and who also has a similar quest that they're on or wants to talk to you more, and what relationships can form from that.
That is so powerful. What would you encourage Shivani today? What would you encourage yourself today?
Yeah, I would tell myself to keep going and keep playing the long game, because, I thought initially, okay, when I release the game, I hope it's like this big kapow firework of boom, I've released the game. I hope, thousands of people buy it, but it's not usually like that for people. So I'm thinking I want my experience to be not, like the firework, but more the bonfire. Like it takes more time. I don't know. Someone else, I think online said this analogy of like firework versus like a bonfire or a fireplace when they're talking about relationships. But I was thinking about this in terms of work. Like, yes, it might take a while to build the fire up, but then once it's built over a longer period of time, it's going to be so giant and roaring, even if in the beginning it's not flashy. So I have to keep reminding myself, like, I'm building a bonfire. Like, it's going to keep going. It's going to keep growing.
State and complete this sentence. I have a principled mind because.
I have a principled mind because I'm patient and I'm willing to stick things out. And that goes for the game. That goes for career moves. I'm patient.
Shivani, it has been more than a pleasure chatting with you. I've learned so much just sharing this time and this space with you. Thanks for taking a chance on yourself. Thanks for continuing to push regardless of the challenges you might face. I'm excited for where this is going to take you, and I look forward to us continuing to strengthen our friendship. Thanks again for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.